Hey guys, this will be video 12 for the how to design build a 58 Explorer replica using Stewart McDonald templates, and I'll be talking about the neck template today in relation to the scale length and stuff like that, and some of your options that you've got. And this is going to be a fairly general video. I will not be doing any work in this video. I don't think. I may, but for the most part, I just want to talk about Pearl and Master Level Madagascar Rosewood and how incredible that stuff is. It's really beautiful, and I'm so glad that we went that route. So, and also for you guys that are not familiar with my channel, I primarily do these videos just for the clients that I'm building a guitar for. You know, you're welcome to stick around and kind of watch, but even though and I title it "How to Do Something." If you really want to see how to build this guitar, well, go about 3 or 4 years back and do a search on a Carina or Lemba 58 Explorer replica how-to video, and I think I've got something like 15 to 20 videos where I walk you step by step through, starting with the wood and just I'm talking like blocks of wood, and then building your dream guitar. And is it justifiable? Not really. No, you could definitely just go to a pawn shop and look up and find something, but you'll do a lot of searching. But if you're good with your tools and all that jazz, you can pull it off. And if anything, you'll enjoy the whole process. But don't expect your first 5 guitars to be anything worthy of really keeping and collecting. And I don't mean to, be, a downer there, but it took a long time for me to get to the point where I really refined everything. So with that said, enough negative talk. Let's get back to happy thoughts and talking about this project coming together and what's going on. I've got about, it would be 3 days of spraying, 2 coats each day, because out of the blue, we got this ridiculous fog and really humid weather in the winter, and then a lot of rain. So even though I'm not spraying outside, but what's going on outside affects what's going on in the interior a little bit. So I sprayed 2 coats a day over a 3-day period, and that ended about 3 days ago. So this has been drying for about 3 days, just because I wanted to see what was going to happen with the base coats. So what are we talking about here? The last video I did probably two cowboy coats of just curiosity, which I'll just count those as one because I sanded 80% of that off. But with that initial coat, it revealed what was going on, and I kind of got a little bit of a rude awakening with the bird's eye maple. Had a lot more divots than I realized, and I have not done any pore filling yet or anything, because what I wanted to do is really build a few coats of the gold Stewmac lacquer and see just how good it was at building coats. And it was exceptional at building a really beautiful coat that sounds like a nitrocellulose lacquer guitar. And it did fill some of those small divots, but some of the larger divots, I knew it wasn't going to work at all. But if you remember in the early part of this video, this guitar had a real nasty little fissure right here, and dark spot, which I feel, or actually a hole. It was cavity, and I filled it in one application with just sanding dust from the guitar where I was kind of doing the initial level work, and then saturated that with the clear extreme power thin, and maybe 2 applications, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was just one application. I know it wasn't more than probably 20 minutes worth of work. And where is it now? I have no idea. It literally vanished after 6 coats of the gold. So with that said, what I'm going to do in this video, if I do any work at all, I'm going to do some testing where we might fool around with seeing what happens with baking soda maybe fill one or two of these with baking soda, drop some CA glue in it, and then maybe fill one or two of these. I say maybe. Let's plan on doing that. So somewhere in this video, I'll be doing that baking soda and CA glue work, and then I'll do some maple dust and CA glue work, because see, I like the idea of, I don't want to try to sand this top and then let the gold dust fill in the holes, because I won't know what's a divot with dust in it versus just the areas that are good and doesn't really need any fill work. So, but if you use an opposing color, like white or pure maple, then it will definitely show you where your work is. As this right here, this area in this location right here proves, it vanished. And when I say vanished, literally no traces whatsoever. And then also, I've got my um, um, was it West System T88? I always keep wanting to call it lacquer epoxy, two-part epoxy. West System T88 two-part epoxy that I'm gonna mix up a little bit of that. It's in my warming station right now because it's fairly cold in the basement. And then what I'm gonna do is just do a real thin razor blade coat where I scrape across an entire large area. And then I'm gonna come back tomorrow and I'm gonna look at what's going on here, because I've got, since this location covered so well with the CA glue, and I trust the CA glue 100% to do this entire guitar. But if I can achieve the same results by taking a thin blade of some sort, like a razor blade or a scraper, and come across this whole guitar with some very thin epoxy, and it works just as well, then that will be a much quicker repair, because there's literally probably about 700 divots that I would have to come in and drip uh, clear CA glue in. So anyway, so if you can hear it in my voice, I'm a little bit undecided about how to pour fill that. And that's an operation I should have done on the front end, but didn't. And here we are. And also, because I had never worked with the Stewmac Nitro, I had no idea how well it was going to cover. I do know that if we were shooting this guitar black, I could have shot two coats, if not three coats a day within 1 hour intervals. And within 2 days, would have been sanding with a 400 grit in between those coats, and within 2 days, I know the black would have filled 99% of every bit of it. I know it would have filled practically every bit of these little divots up here. Probably not one or two of these, but nonetheless, the gold didn't cover as good as, or it didn't build with solids it nearly as well as like a black would have. So so we gave it a shot, and it worked. It worked okay. It's a beautiful color, and the tap tone is just off the charts. So not complaining, just discussing my discoveries there. So with that said, let's go ahead and put this to the side, and then we'll talk about the fretboard and everything, and then we'll come back, and then at the end of the video, then we'll do some of that sample work, and I may pause the camera a little bit, and we'll see what happens. Also, it's fairly cold in the basement, so I've got a space heater behind me just to kind of keep my feet from freezing. But it's like 62 degrees in the basement. The humidity is like 57%, which is incredible. All this wood that's in here is just dry, dry, dry. And the reason I've got a guitar, I've got another Explorer replica over here on the side table that I'll discuss, probably that guitar, and the importance of keeping your shop, really dry and cool as a woodworker. And the cool thing about that guitar I'm looking at right now, I built it, I don't know, a year ago, and doesn't even have any nitrocellulose lacquer on it. And the neck is just like this guitar. It's a husk, and the neck has not moved at all. No twist, no warp, no cup, nothing at all. And that is a testament to my shop, because that will allow me to ship this guitar, that guitar, or any of these other guitars anywhere in the world, and they will not be susceptible to any climate change at all, because the moisture content is so low and the wood is so dry. Okay, so with that said, in I think 2 videos back, I discovered that this fretboard was just not going to work. It was too thin. I'm not going to recap that. However, what I am going to recap is when I discovered that issue. As I mentioned, it's not a throwaway fretboard. It's perfectly fine. It's just that if you compare it to the Stuart McDonald, there's a lot more fretboard right here on the bottom. So with that said, and I've already covered the importance of the thickness of the fretboard being uh, stock dimensions, roughly 1/4 of an inch in the middle, a little bit over 6 millimeter. Because this being a P90 equipped guitar with a pick guard on it, if you went with a insanely thin fretboard, then everything is dropping down, and you run the risk of your neck P90 pickup cover and pickup having to be forced so low in the body that you literally can see the side of the machine work in the pick guard. In the pick guard. And is that something that happens to the best of us? Apparently so, because a lot of the early Gibson Les Pauls, they got the P90 in so low at the bridge that you could see just that. You could see the side of the pick guard on a Les Paul. I've never seen it, well, because they didn't do the P90s in the flat top guitars in the 50s, like 58. They were all humbuckers with rings and stuff like that. But even the big companies, they struggle with stuff like that a little bit, but they got it figured out fairly quickly. So with that said, I just knew that once I had to machine the center of this fretboard thinner, it was going to end up having to be an engineered fretboard, which was probably going to end up on one of my guitars, unless a client made a statement that they didn't care. But that's very unlikely. Most clients, if they're investing any sort of money at all, they want to know that you took the time to shoot straight with them and let them know what their options were. And with this one right here, man, Ed, we really knocked it over the fence. And as soon as I opened up the box, it just blew me away how beautiful and how dark it was and how vintage and how just absolutely incredible it is. The only drawback is, and this is just the wood sources that are available today. This fretboard has it's mostly rift sewn on this side, but it gets fairly plain sewn right up in here, which is not that bad, because what's going to happen, uh, let's say, and this, see, this is the very end of the fretboard, so that's the beginning of the fretboard or the beginning of the speaking length. So you're gonna, and also because, see, this is pre-radius, there's not going to be any of this. Well, let's cheat the center line 1/16 of an inch and push over to get a prettier side. No, you're literally, since it is a true CNC 12-inch radius fretboard, you are definitely going to have to guarantee yourself that you find the center line, not close to it, but you've got to be on center, period. And I hope I remember, there's a thumb tracing of where my thumb is and where my forefinger goes. I'll try it. I don't think you can hear that, but the tap tone is about 15% better than this one, and this one's off the charts. So that's why they call this a master level Madagascar rosewood. It truly, and it's their most, not just because it's expensive, but it is their most expensive fretboard, but only because it is their master level wood. But the drawback is it's more rift sewn than it is pure quarter sewn. This was pretty much straight up quarter sewn, or probably, I think this was about probably 85 degrees. It might have a little rift to it, but more nonetheless, neither one of these is better than the other. They're just different. and this wood is probably about 35 years old, but nonetheless, this would be relatively new. But and it's cool. You know, there's a little knot right there. There's a little knot right there. And does that affect the tone? Not absolutely, not at all. Because when I just did the tap tap tone, see what that point is right there. That represents what's called a node. And if you had like a xylophone, that would be like one of the mounting points right there. And then there would be another mounting point right here. And if you came in with your stick or whatever it's called, and you hit the blade or the xylophone note, each one, I think it's called a key. That would be the point where it would vibrate the most and resonate the most. So the note is usually always about 20 to 25 to about 1/3 to 1/3. You can usually go in on each, so I could go over to this side and go about 1/3 down, about 1/3 over, and that's probably going to be the node, even though it has all these slots in it. And the thinner the wood gets, the darker the tap tone. And it's really cool because this one's considerably brighter, but it's most likely only because I don't have these fret slots cut other than just enough to define where the scale is. And see, these scales are identical. I'll try to just put it on there, but it'll be close enough for viewing purposes. So with that said, you can tell where the actual pearl will be going. You know which locations, and you can also make the determination of if that knot was right in the middle. Well, then the pearl would be covering it, but it won't. It will be outside of the pearl. But is it a big deal? No, of course not. And is it something you're going to even notice after it's said and done? This is dry. Both of these are dry wood, never been oiled, of course, and you can already see that the natural depth and beauty of that master level. And I'm going to continue to call it that because it really is. That's what I paid for, and that's what we're getting is master level. Not only appearance, but the tap tone. And any true guitar builder would tell you that's the target. What does it sound like? And also, here's a little side note trivia for you. Uh, the more bland you can get your fretboard, the better it is as far as from a visual standpoint and being a playing fretboard. I made a mistake once. I built a guitar with, I can't even remember, it was some sort of rosewood, but it wasn't either of what's on the table here, but it was straight up quarter sewn, and it had a lot of chatoyance in it. It was really incredibly beautiful. But the more I leveled that fretboard and the more I buffed it and polished it and sanded it, the fretboard, it was like looking at a swimming pool. It got so vivid, and so much figure was going on when you would move the fretboard. It was multi-dimensional to the point where it would almost make you dizzy trying to play the guitar because you lost your depth perception. Whereas with the rosewood, or especially ebony, and jazz guitarists prefer like a real bland, you know, just classical guitarists, even I believe I prefer ebony. But long story short, the less vivid your fretboard is, by far the better. I don't have a problem with real straight grain streaks. You don't get lost in that. But if you're playing a fretboard, especially if you don't have any sort of a pearl, like substantial pearl in it, proceed with extreme caution using a really vivid fretboard because that one was sickening. What kind of guitar was it on? It probably would have been one of my early Les Paul replicas. It might have been. I don't think it was on an Explorer replica, but I sold the guitar with the disclaimer. Please note that when I play this thing, I almost get a headache, and just be aware it's beautiful in picture form, but just make certain that maybe you're just someone who wants to buy a guitar and hang it on the wall and admire it because it was very difficult to play. Okay, so a little bit too much information, but could save you a true headache if you're truly thinking about building a guitar. So sometimes, if not all, often, the more bland the fretboard, the more enjoyable it is to play. Okay, so obviously I have not done any pearl work at all. I received this fretboard, I think 3 or 4 days ago, so I've had it quite a while. And this came in, I think 2 days. So in other words, I could have already started this work, but I wanted to kind of go through the process because I did not show you any of this work right here. And this will probably be kind of beneficial from a how-to standpoint because uh, this is going to be a difficult pearl job because this is pretty much the finished fretboard, and everything that you do, as I say, not to sound melodramatic, but is going to be seen. So if you're doing X-Acto knife work and you slip and you come across this fretboard, you're going to do some very noticeable damage to it. So screwing up is not an option here. And this is, so I bring this up to say this. I've got the jig for it to machine every bit of these within like a few hours, but I've elected to go ahead and just cut each pearl by hand and install it. Will still do some overhead route work and relieve to get a lot of that cleaned out. But for the most part, every bit of this is going to be done exactly like this fretboard because I did the bulk of this one just by hand, and I think it took me 3 or 4 nights, give or take. Typically, you can do about 3 pearl each night. So, and then usually here at the end, you get a little more comfortable. You can do more, but just plan on 3 or 4 nights for doing your pearl work, and then after it's all said and done, it'll be finished. But see, this fretboard right here, even though it has the radius, it was an S4S board that I was working everything flat, and it's very easy to just use. I can't move that because I have that adjusted per the true center of that fretboard, but we use this one. But you can actually come in here and just build the entire fretboard with a $15 right angle. So it's very simple with using your X-Acto blade as well as your true fret saw, because you do have to have a fret saw that cuts um, the curve, the correct. I think it's 235 thousandths, I believe is the number. Sometimes I always say that wrong. It's very narrow. It's like under a 16th of an inch. Okay, yeah, that should be right. 235 thousandths or 20, 25, 23 ten thousandths or something like that. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. But just know that when you're cutting that, it has to be with an actual fret saw. That's where I'm going with this. Okay, but this one is different, and it was fairly easy to cut these pearl because I was able to actually use my X-Acto knife and just set. Let me grab one of the. I'm spending a little bit more time talking about this than I was planning on, so if anything, I may just reel myself back in and stop talking about it. This is the celluloid pearl, and for you guys out there that want to know, is the celluloid pearl just as attractive as a true white mother pearl? I'd say yes. And as long as you glue this in with the Stewmac binding glue, it was amazing when I restored the 69 Goldtop Les Paul, the tap tone after it glued in. This stuff it sounded incredible. It had a very organic tap tone, even though it was actually plastic or ABS or whatever it's called. So I would say, especially for your first guitars, I wouldn't work with the pearl. I would just work with the celluloid, and that's what they were putting in the original 59s. So with that said, and also this is like $16 a set, and this pearl right here can average anywhere from $50 to $80 according to where you get it. So, and this is harvested out of the, I think this is harvested out of the Philippines, but it's basically identical to your Australian white. It's very white, has very little pink and green, blue in it. Has a little, but not much, and it's basically identical to what you see in this board. So, but with the celluloid, it's stark white. And but the drawback with the celluloid is you can look at that and tell, yeah, that's artificial. Because even in the natural, even in nature, most true pearl has a little bit of color variation to it. And I gotta stop because I'm getting way too long-winded about that type of stuff. But the reason I brought that up is when you're getting ready to, that's the first, second, third. So we'd be working in this location right here. And so I don't have to open that mother of pearl just yet. I'll do exactly that. I'll just continue to use this. But basically what I do is just come in and I find the center. And let's say this is a 30. Then I'll set my marker. This may sound a little bit strange, but I'll set it either low or high so that when I make my mark, I'm going to make it on the back so it's easy to see. Okay, I made one mark. What are the odds? That's dumb luck. That's bizarre. Usually I offset a little bit so that line is off center on each mark, and then when I lay it atop the fretboard, which has the center line drawn down it, I'm literally, all I have to do is connect that center of that pearl right there. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So it would go in that location right there. So I've got a center line going on right here, and then all I'm having to do now is just guarantee that I define the center between those two locations right there. And on a side note, if you're doing a Les Paul custom, then just note that that pearl right there, you'll want to position it a little bit off center and closer towards the nut, because you'll need to compensate for the overhang of that fret, and then the fact that there is no fret up here, but just the nut location. And did they do that on this guitar? No. You can see how considerably wider it is right here than it is right here. Is that a big deal? Absolutely not. But if you're really splitting hairs and you want to really truly center that pearl, then you'll offset that one a little bit high. But with this one right here, all of the 59 Les Paul-esque designs, everything is a first, second, third. So everything is going to be perfectly centered between each slot. And then obviously it's just a matter of making certain you don't let it get off square. And how do you guarantee that? Well, you got a jig set up that guarantees that you stay true. And then, sorry, sometimes this is sheer idiocy. I'm just going to guess at it. But then you're just guaranteeing that you, let me get behind the camera. It's pretty close. I'm just eyeballing. And then, you start, just bring it down. 3, 4, there's the 5th location, because see, these two this pearl, number 3 and number 5, they're the exact same dimension. And then once you go to 7 and 9, it gets more narrow and noticeably narrow. So as you can see in this packet, starting from the top going down, that's number 3 and 5 at the top, and then 7 and 9 below that, and then you're going to jump to the 12th fret, and then the 15th, and then below that you'll be, the 3 at the bottom are the identical 17, 19, and 21. Okay, so if you had some sort of jig, you're only working with three different dimensions. However, I find it's just as easy to cut these by hand, and especially if you're working with a fretboard where uh, if you were relying on some sort of jig and something slipped or just something crazy happened, and you did all this machine work really fast on a hand operated setup, and but you somehow or another you screwed up, then you've lost your entire fretboard. But when you're doing this by hand, you can literally verify absolutely every location, even up to the point to where you go ahead and just take your pencil and just draw around it and ask yourself, does it look right? You can really hold your own hand through this whole process if you're doing it by hand. And I found that if you can just appreciate the artisan side of doing this, this is not nearly as difficult and taxing as you would think it would be. It's incredibly enjoyable once you see those pearl go in, and then absolutely every one of them are just spot on, perfectly true. And I'm talking about their perpendicular, that their widths are perpendicular, obviously, with your S4S board. That's critical, regardless of what you start with. I would highly recommend always starting with an S4S, meaning that if this is 2 1/4 down here, make certain it's exactly the same down here and all that jazz. And that way, when you're going across it, you're just verifying everything. You can triple check and make certain you don't screw up. And let's say you screwed up and did something really stupid, like this was the 12th location and you ended up putting it here at the 11th. Well, you could machine every bit of that location out right there, just deep enough to make certain that it disappears, and then you could come down here with some of this remnant material, and you could reposition that up there, and I guarantee you would even forget that you had to epoxy in a fillet in one of those. But and I usually do this intentionally. I just go ahead and cut it up to the 25th fret, so that I have the 20, even though this is going to be a 22 fret guitar, it'll be ending, well, that's the 21st fret right there. That's the 21st fret, 22nd. That's the end of the fretboard right there. That's where it will be getting cut off. But then I always like having this because, see, I can hammer a couple little frets in here like I did with this fretboard, and then I can use it for layout purposes. If I've got a couple little samples of Stewmac fretboard material, and then I can put a fret in there and then just throw that atop a guitar and lay a straight edge across it, and I can be guaranteed exactly when I'm assessing my pitch, string height, neck to body pitch, and my target of about 19 millimeter at the D and the G string, bottom of the D and the G string. Okay, so that's kind of a recap out of what I've always talked about. What's your target? If you miss that, well, you don't have an authentic replica. You can no longer call it replicas. It might look like this guitar, but it certainly is not going to feel like it. So anyway, so I'm very happy with this work and how it turned out, and it actually machined out by hand fairly easily. So I don't have any problem going ahead and doing that with this one right here. And then obviously this is the exact pearl for this fretboard, and I'll go ahead and take one out. It's not gonna be the end of the world. But usually what I do is try to let me go ahead and get my tape. No, I don't need that much. I think I mentioned I've got a space heater in the floor here. Just might be a little bit noisy. But after I'm through demoing this or measuring this or assessing this, you know, in relation to even like the celluloid, and that'll be a better sample. You can see how close they are, but I can tell that one's fake and the one on the bottom is real pearl. And also this is some fairly thick pearl right there. It's really awesome. But the dimensions are a little bit different. The celluloid is a little bit taller and it's even a little bit wider. So unfortunately, you couldn't design a jig to machine both of these. And I don't know if this, I'm pretty certain that this is just machined a little bit oversized so that you can shape it down for restoration work, excuse me, as well as new work as well. But I do know that from a dimensional standpoint, this is the vintage specifications. And what does it look like? Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. Let's see if I can figure some way to, oh, I know what I can do. I can possibly use that piece of tape that I just tore. I had no idea I was going to be talking about this much detail. Let me check the time. 36 minutes. Yeah, probably what I'll do is just plan on doing some of that filling for about 10 minutes. And it's been a while since I've done a video, so it's not like I'm worried about, you know, wasting anyone's time. Because if you're following this series, you're really serious about watching a guitar come together. And this is the authentic mother of pearl. Just doing a little bit of double-sided tape on the back there. So let me just position it visually, and we'll see what the pearl's going to look like on the master level rosewood. And what I see is pretty incredible. Keep reaching for that one, but I can't. Spot on. Close enough for classical. And see what you would do if you were set up with your jig and you had that mother of pearl exactly where you wanted it. Then you would come in, giving all my secrets away. Then you would just come in and measure from the top of the pearl there to the center line of the fret slot. And then you can see that I missed it by about 1/16 of an inch. I'm about 1/16 of an inch high, so let's see if we can push it down. And actually find the actual center. See what I just did? Pushed it down a little bit. The reason I'm showing you this is because all you need to do mother of pearl is the epoxy, obviously to epoxy it in. And where's my, oh gosh, it's upstairs. Let me pause. I'm gonna go get my other X-Acto knife. Okay, so you want to go with the larger X-Acto knife. That's your general purpose small one. Brand new blade, and just be prepared to really take your time. Low pressure. You're just doing real gentle scoring. But personally, I would, once I find my true center, I've got this set up. I'm going to show you in a moment how you can do this just on a jig. And then you've got your jig drawn, a center line drawn on your jig, and you're even going to draw your center line on your actual fretboard, you know, all the way down. And then once you draw that center line, you're no longer having to locate each pearl on center. You're not having to make, you know, a center mark at each one. You've already defined it. The pencil mark is there. And then that's what I meant by once you identify the true center on each pearl. Let me just guess at it here. I usually have two marks. See, in other words, they're about 1 millimeter apart, and that guarantees that my pencil thickness of my pencil lead didn't deceive me and get everything off. Because once you look down this fretboard, it will definitely reveal itself if one of these gets off a millimeter, or especially any more than a half a millimeter. It could be measurable and even visible. But with the two marks right there, and then you've got your pencil mark on your actual fretboard, all you're doing now is just guaranteeing that that you're now getting an equal distance between the bottom of the pearl, the center of the fret slot, the top of the pearl, and the center of the fret slot. Very simple, extremely basic geometry. We're just literally finding the centers. But rather than trying to find the center here and have a pencil mark, as long as you have these two distances identical or so close that visibly it's undetectable. But see, keep in mind, the closer the frets get together, the more precise. Let me back up. These need to be perfect. they can't be off at all. They've got to be truly perpendicular, regardless of whether they're a distance apart or literally. Well, I don't know why I keep showing here, or just like that right there. You got to be exact. Okay, so just plan on being exact. And what I would do at this point, I would take a small mechanical pencil, and see, I'm on my jig here, which is holding this one true. And this is exactly how I do it. If I'm doing them by hand, let's say I've got that true right there, I'll go ahead and take the pencil and I will just gently pencil around it, but just enough to guarantee that I've got some sort of reference point later on. If because eventually I'm going to have to remove this pearl, but if I'm guaranteed that the distance between the center of this fret slot and the top edge of the pearl, in other words, that they're identical, they're truly symmetrical, well then I'm going to go ahead and hold this true, and I'm going to just hold this in place, and I'm going to go ahead and take my X-Acto knife, and I think we all have a very good idea of where to start and where to stop. Do not dare, let it go beyond, but you just have to go exactly to the start point, and you have to stop exactly at the start point. And here's the trick. Rather than trying to pull this side, you're not going to be able to pull it, because you're going to fall into the grain and the grain's going to pull you. You're going to have to take the point of the X-Acto knife and just punch down, and you'll be if this is the pearl, and that's exactly, well, let's just do one. And if that's exactly where you want it, then you're going to take the point of the X-Acto knife and you're just going to punch down. I think it's called perforated. Perforated or perforated. I think it's perforated. You're going to do a perforation, just little punches, and then I can assure you, once you remove that, you're going to see it. It's going to be so noticeable. And then all you're going to do is just make certain that you just punch straight down in and define. And with the really sharp X-Acto knife, man, I can punch halfway through this fretboard. I can pretty much perforate the entire arc on every one of them. And that's because that's exactly how I did this. And it was sufficient to do a really nice handmade fretboard. And I don't want them to look like they were installed with a CNC machine, because any vintage guitar that I've ever picked up, they look like they were handmade by someone who had just barely learned how to do it. You could definitely see the hand marks in the fact that it was a handmade guitar. And I'm talking 1956 Gretsch Silver Jet that I had that was worth, $10,000. And so I saw that guitar. It went to Australia, and I regret selling it. But it was so cool because I remember looking at it, going, "That's the bar." that, that's it. Well, hell, if I'd have known that, I would have started doing this in the 10th grade. So, nonetheless, you want to do beautiful, precise work, but I think it's cool when there's a little bit of character in it that it shows that it was a handmade guitar. Okay. And this right here is a perfect example of a CNC cut. I say that it may just be that whoever did this pearl at Gibson, because this is an authentic 80s something Les Paul custom, and it may very well be that it's just because it's the ebony. It might be a little bit of black epoxy. This one right here. I can see it. There's a hell of a gap right there, about a half a millimeter, and that one too, loaded full of black epoxy. So maybe they are handmade. I don't know. Beautiful work though, nonetheless. It's really beautiful. But sometimes it can be too pretty, and it's so nice that you're scared to, scratch it or fall down the stairs with it. So there you have it. That's the authentic mother of pearl that will be going in this board. And what does it look like? It looks like a 1959 Les Paul, man. That's insane. What was this? I think this was like $145 shipping, everything. And how did it ship? Uh, Pretty insane. Just the fretboard came in this one box by itself, and it was just on the bottom. It was just on the bottom, but nonetheless, completely well packed and no chance of it getting damaged at all. And I was kind of complaining about, oh, Stewart down, they're so expensive on their shipping. Well, yeah, I mean, that box is not free, and nor was the time to actually select a really beautiful board off the shelf. And I've spent enough money with Stewmac that they know that I will send stuff back. I have sent, I think, I've sent two fretboards back in the last 5 years, and made them give me a refund. And they did, no complaints, but it wasn't pretty. So they know that they can look at my account and know that I've been with them for like 18 years, and that I will give them a call. If they were to send me a call or something really, really poor quality, I definitely would be sending this back. But I'm not. It's really beautiful. And does it look like Brazilian? It's as close as we could get to Brazilian as you ever could, other than the fact it has some plain sewn right there. Okay. So, did I spend too much time talking about that? Let me check the time. 48 minutes. I don't think so, even though a lot of it was just off the cuff. Yeah, because I spent a hell of a lot of time talking about how to actually put that pearl in. So, obviously, after you perforate that, and I'm talking about around the actual pearl, not draw the pencil mark and then start perforating the pencil mark. I should have clarified that. I probably did. Let me just repeat. So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to have, the pencil mark. I talked about how once I remove this pearl, I want to have some sort of visual pencil mark that once I start chiseling this stuff out, that I know where I'm restricted to work. And obviously, I've perforated both of these straight down, but because I'm going across the grain here, and I'm definitely doing this with the pearl in place, where I'm making that identifying very, very gentle defining score, and then I start easing into it, and then just start pressing into it a little bit, even so much so that sometimes I'll lean the blade a little bit to guarantee that the center line of the blade is literally riding up against the pearl. And then so you're able to cut these two straight across. And if you're going to screw up, what's going to happen? You're going to slip, and you're going to overshoot, and you're going to scratch off this side here. And is that catastrophic? pretty much. It definitely can be catastrophic unless you're really good at coming in here and creating artificial grain. But we don't want to do that. If you've invested this much in your fretboard, it would be wise to spend 4 or 5 nights just doing one purl each night. Even if it took you 3 hours to do each purl, well, that's only 25 or 30 hours worth of work. You can do that in 1 week, and then this thing's going to be in your arsenal for your entire life. Okay, so I won't get emotional about anything because we all know why we do this stuff. But nonetheless, I think I mentioned this is a vintage Pa Fijo or Bolivian rosewood, and this was Madagascar, and they do call it master level Madagascar from Stu McDonald, and they are the same exact scale. Oh, right there. Where am I? I think I've got that right. Anyway, they are the same scale. I'm looking at it on an angle. Trying to find it. Okay, so two beautiful boards, but this one's going to be much darker, and just just by using just natural oils, I won't have to do any color work at all. Not at all. Oh, and what is that fretboard? That is item number 1058-MMR, slotted fingerboard for Gibson Madagascar Rosewood Master Grade. Okay, and there you have it. I won't talk about the scales, but I just keep a chart here in my headstock book. If I'm doing headstock design, then I've got different scale charts that I work from. 24.562, which is really short. 24.75, which is vintage correct, which I do that a lot. There's your 25 inch, 25 and a half, a 34 inch base, but down here in the blue, 625.48 millimeter is also 24.625. And what is that? That's the modern Gibson scale, and that's the only Gibson scale that Stuart McDonald stocks. So if you're buying their templates, just proceed with caution about your layout, because I would recommend just buying, if you're going to build one of their template guitars, replicas, then make certain that you either know how to lay out your own scale or just order your fretboard from them. Even if it's $150, I think it's a great deal. Okay. Okay, so with that said, I'll put the pearl back in its slot, and let me erase that so I don't, in case that's not true. The only thing I didn't talk about was how you can do this. If you're really on the cheap, all you really have to do, if you're going to turn this into a fretboard, is just somehow or another fasten this to your lower board and take it all the way up to the very edge. And you could, I wouldn't recommend doing double-sided tape. And if you see those little dark spots right there, that's where I CA glued it down to something, probably the jig where I was machining it. But I would also probably just I say probably, I always do this. I always CA glue them directly down to a very trustworthy flat source. And then just imagine there's not, all it is what I showed you, like on the back. Imagine that's what you're looking at. It's very intimidating because you're thinking, oh, I got so much work to do, but you got to start somewhere. And I don't necessarily, I never start at this location as the zero location the way they did here, but they're cutting these with CNC equipment, so it's very precise. And I verified this is perfectly square. This down here is nowhere near square. So proceed with caution. Just because something might look square, don't use that as a reference point when you're doing your any work at all. But basically, all you'd have to do is just temporarily glue this down like this, and then start go to. I use Tundra Man, like the Toyota Tundra Man fret scale calculator, and then I can enter into his scale calculator what I'm building, and then it just calculates everything in a chart form, whether I'm working in SAE, imperial, or in metric. And then what I do in my other jig, I have a hole drilled down here that I put a 1/8 inch drill bit in. And just to get me started, I use this extremely high-end ruler that I got at a professional cabinet builder's shop over in Birmingham about 30 years ago. No, 35 years ago. No, probably not that long. But see, it has the eyelet there in the middle. I hang that eyelet on the nail or the drill bit, and then my metric scale is on the bottom, and my SAE scale is on the top. And how do I lay out my fretboards? I've never laid out a fretboard in anything other than metric. I like, even though I work with SAE Imperial a lot, I love laying out a fretboard in metric, and that's exactly how this one is. I never start at 0. I always start at 100. So that ought to tell you roughly where the drill bit is on your straight flat source. The drill bit is roughly in that location right there. I'll make certain that the fretboard's hanging over a little bit. If this fretboard had a really nasty knot right here, then I'm going to adjust it where that knot gets placed under a fret location or something like that. Or either maybe I like the knot or I like the imperfection because I think it gives it character, who knows. But like if it's up in this location, see with this fretboard right here, I was definitely looking at the straightness of the grain in this board, but I'm also looking at it down here to ask myself, what does it do? Nothing's perfect. And if it's waving, I always have a tendency to, if it waves, I want it to kind of wave down. Not much, but if it's waving, I don't want to see too much of a wave up. But this one waves up, flattens out, and it comes up just a little bit, and then it stays very flat. I'm talking about like just the regular grain in the board. And everything about it was just really beautiful. Didn't have to cheat anything at all. But nonetheless, we're not using this fretboard, but that's exactly how I did this one, and it's on a jig that I've got over here behind me that I built probably 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and it works. It's very simple, but what I can do now is if I have a square, if I'm just working with a square board, which I'm going to have to flip this over again. Now I'm able to allow the square, because sometimes I use a larger square, and therefore I'm guaranteed that I'm literally making contact with the jig as well as the fretboard itself as I lay out my scales. I'm gonna have to stop because I'm spending way too much time talking about this, but it's so simple if you'll just look at it from that standpoint of, man, all you need is a really high quality X-Acto knife, a fret saw, and a quality scale that you trust, and you can build your own fretboard. Again, is it worth it? I say absolutely not. But sometimes you're trying to do something incredibly unique where you can't order this with these pearl already installed. You know, you just can't. You could, but it's coming from somewhere that I don't trust. Especially if they're like $60, you know. I don't trust that at all. Okay. So with that said, let me pause and get the table cleaned up a little bit and think about how I should end this video and see if I'm even going to be able to do that putty work that I promised I was going to try to do. Okay, let's spend one more minute with the fretboard and find out or discuss something that's kind of tricky. Since this is radiused, I'll be working on a flat surface here, And the cool thing, like I had that board a little while ago. I'm not exactly certain that this one I will allow to go. I'm almost 100% certain that I will not be doing this one the way I showed you, because I'm working with a radius top, and I can't allow my square to roll because it will distort. So what I have to do is trust my tool and just lay it directly on my flat surface and ask myself, how close am I to the actual finished thickness? And then I have to make the determination, do I raise this platform up, or do I design a special jig where I rip some sort of offset so that I'm guaranteed that my square comes across the fretboard very true from a two-dimensional standpoint. And I'm looking at that, and I'm pretty certain that I'm going to have to build a custom jig for this one and do just that, where I machine off a little bit of thickness that will allow my square to actually drop down and remain perfectly flush across the top. Otherwise, I run the risk of it traveling. I may change my mind. It just depends. I'm not there yet. But where I'm going this, the most important thing at this point is to set up one of your tools with true and find true center. And it took about 3 minutes, and I did just that. So the way you do it, obviously, this is 2 3/8 of an inch wide, so that's 1 3/16 to center. However, I have to offset for the thickness of the pencil lead, so I've got this open just a little bit under 2 3/16 of an inch. I make a mark up here, on this side of the scale, and then when I flip over, don't go across the mark again, but drop below the mark and then connect the lines and ask yourself, then look down it. I don't know if I'll be able to show it. Yeah, that's showing really well. And then once you view that, it must appear as though it was drawn with one mark. If not, keep offsetting until you find that true center. And then once you find that true center, then you're actually able to go down the entire board, and do the entire board. And you're going to have this very stationary, where you can do a very true single pass, PASS. And what that does, that will guarantee that you have located the center of the board up there, as well as the center of the board down here. And with those locations and these locations, these very specific locations, they're always going to vary. Then you're going to be able to define your taper from the back, and you'll want to work all your taper lines from the back side, and then you'll make the determination of whether you taper it on a router table, or, which I rarely ever do, if at all. I usually always taper on my table saw, but be incredibly careful with a poor blade, because you'll tear out really bad. And then the whole idea about the taper is I've never had a taper be the same. They're always different, because all the guitars are different. The nut widths, as the nut width changes, either wider or more narrow, and the binding dimension that you're working with, everything, there's just, it's going to have to be custom calculated and then custom laid out. But once you cut this fretboard, in order to receive binding, you have to even anticipate how much of the binding you're going to allow to roll in, like what's called a rolled fretboard, like a jazz fretboard. And Sam, if you're watching this, this is what I was talking about with your guitar. I sold the black 58 Explorer, and a guy in Virginia bought it. Sam, I appreciate you buying the guitar. And if you're watching this video, no, I don't think you and I talked about this. But nonetheless, Sam's guitar does not have the binding. But with this guitar, since we're doing binding, what I talked about with Sam was I always build a jazz guitar, a jazz fretboard, and they're rolled. The neck lower rolls up into the binding. The binding rolls into the top of the fretboard, but I like it to look from the front. To me, this binding is too wide. It's just too much binding. But on the vintage guitars, they probably used a 60 thousandths binding because that's what they were using on the body. And then by the time they rolled it, when you look at the binding from the front, it looks micro thin. But if you look at it at the cross section, it's, well, unfortunately, that one's not a real, that's a real clean square cut. That's 60 thousandths on the right. That's probably like 80 thousandths, if not 90 thousandths on the left. But by the time you bind your fretboard, man, I'm getting too detailed here, but I think it's some good information. By the time you roll this binding into this fretboard, once it's tapered, it'll be more narrow up here, and then you're looking at it from the front. Oh man, I can already see it right now. This is insane how beautiful this is. The parchment against the Madagascar. Sorry guys, this is hell. I'm trying to hold this because it's fighting me. It's wanting to bend. I'll do the best I can to make it look pretty. But when you're looking at it from the front, it'll be about half that width. But in all actuality, and it'll make it look like it's only like a 20 thousandths binding or a 30 thousandths binding, but in all actuality, it'll be wide enough that it allowed you to roll the neck lower into the fretboard and create just that, a very comfortable fretboard. And Sam, that's why your guitar feels the way it feels, is because I always build a rolled fretboard. Okay. So, and I got to thinking about the importance of, if we're doing all this fretboard conversation, I might as well have defined what's really your target. Because see, once you find the center here, now you're simply just calculating, I'll be deducting 60 thousandths. Let's say I want to make a 1 3/4 inch wide fretboard. Excuse me, 100% finished. I want it 1 3/4 inch wide. That's an easy number. Well, we're going to have a 1/16 of an inch binding on the bass side and on the treble side. So that's 1/8 of an inch, correct? Pretty easy math. 1 3/4 of an inch minus 1/8 of an inch is 1 5/8 of an inch. And if you don't believe me, we're simply 3/4 down to 5/8. So I'm going to be 1 5/8 on my wood width, and then I'll need to divide that in half. So it's very simple. And for you guys that don't use the imperial much, if you're just trying to find the middle of 1 5/8, well, this just separate the two. You've got 1 inch, and then you've got 5/8 of an inch in fractional form. So just find 1/2 of the 1, and then 1/2 of the 5/8, which is 5/16, or double the denominator. The numerator stays the same, so double the denominator. So we got 1/2 and 5/16, and what will that be? Well, 1/2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is 13/16. So I will be coming up here, and this is this guitar. Well, it'll be just a little bit less than that, but I'll be coming up here 13/16 off the center, making a very precise mark there. 1 13/16, 1 and I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. Come off the center, 13/16 up, 13/16 down. Verify your math. Should be 1 5/8 of an inch, and then once you define those, define the taper, which is typically like 2 3/16 of an inch minimum. Don't go over 2 1/4 up here at the end. So if I'm 2 3/16, I'll be taking off 1/8, I'll be dropping down to 2 and 1/16, and then half of 2 and 1/16 will be 1 and then 1/32. So I'll be measuring off 1 and 1/32 of an inch off of either side down here. Draw my line with a very precise straight edge, then set up my jig. And if I wanted to, look, there's my taper. I guarantee you that's going to be real close to the taper. Then if I wanted to, I could put it on the router table and route that off with ease, or either I could put it on my table saw jig and then table saw it off. And I won't go into that anymore. But it's very simple to lay that out. And then once you've got this scale exactly where you want it, go ahead and define the center line on the front as well. Same thing, you know. Verify it. And your pencil went directly over your other pencil. So that scale is set up for true center line. Set it to the side because it's ready to do mother of pearl installation. And if you can get good at fretboard work, you could make a career out of just doing that, strictly just fretboards. I think the guys in Nashville are charging around $450 to do a replacement fretwork. Like if you brought this 1980 Gibson Les Paul and the frets were worn out, I think they charge around $400 to $500, $450 to $500 to do it and not screw anything up. These are guys that know exactly how to do that, and these are guys that will refret a 1959 Les Paul that's worth, you know, pick your number. So I'm talking about the guys at Gruen, Joe Glazer. I'm sure there's some other guys up there, but when I was living in Nashville, those were the ones that I was consulting with, and then Phil Jones. And look what I just did. I'm bad about that. So I just lost my center line. So I have to find that again. So with that said, let's make some dust. Oh, wow. 1 hour and 12 minutes. Sorry, I'm gonna skip. I'm gonna end the video, and then in the next video I'll just discuss what I determined to be the best source to make that divot repair, and then we will have a guitar that's going, because as I mentioned in the front end, I didn't even know if I was going to get to that, but I think all the fretboard conversation that we had in this video was not only incredibly important, but it was timely, and also it gave Ed the opportunity to see his guitar come together a little bit and how beautiful the colors are, the vintage, the look. This is actually going to be a really, really incredible guitar, and I'm not just saying that because you know, of Ed paying me to build his guitar. It really is going to be a beautiful guitar. So I appreciate you guys dropping in, and I hope it was beneficial, not a waste of time. I can't imagine it being that. But if you got any questions, I'll leave the comments up. Let me know, and we'll go from there. So I'll see you guys in the next video.